obviously I'm on the Messi hater list apparently now.
I would like to take this opportunity instead to plea to the Chicago Fire squad right now.
And I'm going to get the jokes out of the way. The last time the Revolution had 60,000 in the building, the Revolution lost the MLS Cup in 2002, and yours truly did not have a single shot on goal.
I got so used to him just buying that
Wow, now I feel the pressure. I gotta flip it on him. No, but you're right.
What's up, everybody? This is MLS, and I'm your host, Jillian Sakovitz, and we have a VIP alert today in studio. 101 caps for Canada, a World Cup midfielder twice, and an Olympian, Kaylin Kyle, in the house. Thank you for joining us.
It feels good. None of the guys are in here. There's a lot of female energy. We need some plants, but other than that, it's feeling pretty good in studio.
Well, we'll bring that male energy in now. We got Taylor Twellman and Sasha Kleshton, our tried and true. Tried and true analysts always show up. What are you shaking your head for, Taylor?
Plants, female energy. Sasha, we're not doing this, are we?
Do we really have to do this right now with the plants, Kaylin?
To be fair, I don't think I've ever owned a plant in my life because I would have just killed them all off. So
well, they'll be artificial.
Fake plant. There you go.
We're going to put some greenery in your studios, too. Don't you two worry. We are almost a third with Matchday 11 ahead, a third of the way through the MLS season, and we've seen some epic moments. We've got Arrowhead, El Tráfico, but I saw one of the best moments this past weekend.
Dad, club it!
Yeah, say, Dad, come off the bench.
No! Dinosaur!
Is Callum McCarty, son of Dax McCarty, just, calling for his dad to come off the bench in a jam-packed Mercedes-Benz Stadium. You gotta love it, kids.
Oh, that's amazing. I also feel for you, Dax, because I went through the same stuff in my last season of playing. I was having dinner one night, and my son Knox says, Daddy, so why do you stand on the side of the field and watch the game? Why don't you go in the game? Oh, man, kids just tell you the brutal and honest truth. Dax McCarty, I feel for you, man, but your son is very cute.
Sasha, imagine if I had kids when I lost 4 MLS Cups. I mean, I'd be dead loser.
Well, Hayden keeps me honest. He always tells me I'm the worst soccer player in the house and I've never played a game in my life. I'm like, are you joking me?
That's not true.
And then
That's
Adrian, he backs it up. I'm like, guys.
Hold on. Mommy's better than daddy in that house.
Thank you.
You got a tough crowd. You got a tough crowd in that house. Let's move over to the West. Leading the West is the LA Galaxy, but the teams that we want to focus on are those three right there, all arguably surprises right behind the LA Galaxy in the Vancouver Whitecaps, Real Salt Lake, and the Colorado Rapids Whitecaps, by the way, with a game in hand. Who would have thought that would be where we're at this point in the season? Fantastic tests as well across the weekend. You've got Colorado taking on Cincinnati, the New York Red Bulls taking on Vancouver, and Philly taking on RSL. So all of these three teams now have to go on the road. Sasha, which team do you believe in the most?
Well, I believe in all three because they've had a very good start to the season. But the team I believe in the most
you can't start off and say all three of them, Sasha. You sound like BWP.
No, I'm saying that they're all three good teams, but you're giving me a question. I'm going to answer it now. Real Salt Lake is the team I believe in the most, and the main reason why is because that team has a superstar where Vancouver and Colorado do not, and his name is Chicho Arango. 15 goals scored this season for Real Salt Lake. He has 8 goals and 6 assists. 14 of the 15 goals have come through this man. He's a bona fide superstar in Major League Soccer. I know, Taylor, you have called him the MVP of the league so far. He has been fantastic. But it's a double-edged sword. So he's the reason why I believe in them most, but he's also the reason why if he gets injured, they have a massive drop-off, just like he did at the end of last season heading into the playoffs. Double-edged sword, but Salt Lake, as long as he stays healthy, is the #1 team.
I love that Sasha covered all of his bases. He covered all of his bases there, didn't he? I support all three teams. Chicho Arango, he's good when he's good, but if he's injured, it's a completely different team. I see what you're doing, Sasha.
I have to point out Chicho Arango also leading now the Golden Boot race, one ahead of Lionel Messi's 7 with that 8 Who you got, Kaylin?
This is why I'm going Colorado, because you look at what they spent in the offseason, around $5 million. And this is proven, if you spend money in Major League Soccer, you start to get results. Add in Chris Armas. He's added in a mentality of this side, coming off that 4-1 defeat in opening game against Portland, that Red Bull mentality. But he's also mixed in, we need to not play like the Red Bulls do, high pressing in high moments all the time. We need to pick our moments. When can we press? When can we sit in as a team? And then you look at the spine of the team. You look at Navajo, a player that came in last season, struggled to find goals, and yes, he scored a lot of them from the spots this season, but then you have Mihailovic playing underneath him in that number 10 role. We were screaming, just play him in the number 10 role. Let him work his magic. Center backs for both of these sides have been phenomenal as well. Bassett has been unbelievable, 3 goals already on the season. I look at this team and how they're starting to grow into games and grow into this league, but also grow from losing positions. You look at LAFC, they were down. Inter Miami, they were down. They're finding ways to win, and they're finding ways to win on the road. And we all know in Major League Soccer, if you can collect points at home, but then find ways to win away from home, it's a good recipe for success.
You
guys don't want to fight me on this?
That's all you got?
No, I like the Colorado Rapids. My worry about this team is that as it comes down to the playoff stretch, when I compare them to Vancouver and Salt Lake, is that Vancouver and Salt Lake together, they have playoff experience. Salt Lake has been to the last 3 playoffs under Pablo Mastroeni. Chris Armas still needs to harden this team a little bit. I like what he's doing. I spoke to him recently. He said he's enjoying the wins with the guys, but continuing to push the guys so that they don't get too comfortable. I think that's key for Colorado. A tournament perhaps like Leagues Cup can harden this team, get them that kind of playoff knockout experience. Maybe by the end of the season, I'm saying something different.
Yeah, I think you both bring up interesting points. First off, Sasha, the MVP of this league right now, I don't care what anyone says, and obviously I'm on the Messi hater list apparently now, but RSL's had 15 goals scored on the year. 15. 14 of those 8 goals, 6 assists have come off their number 9 up front. If he's healthy and he's playing at their ability, he can single-handedly take them to where they need to go. Colorado, Kaylin, you're 100% correct. In that style, that system, the way the Red Bulls like to play, if you add a little bit of quality and go by it, then all of a sudden the system outkicks its coverage a little bit. That's what I've seen from Chris Armas. But make no mistake about it, I'm going to say Vancouver for 2 reasons why. They're undefeated on the road. But not undefeated, they're unbeaten. They've won 3 games on the road. And in this league where winning on the road is the most difficult thing to do, I get it. Their schedule isn't great. But the fact is, they've played 3 games on the road. They've won those 3. The second one, and more importantly to me, is when it comes to the MLS Cup playoffs, if you can win games 1-0, you can move on. They've only given up 9 goals. And when the pedigree of the team, the identity of the team, because of the way they've built that roster, is be a little scrappy, be cohesive, be connected, and limit the goals you give up, they've got a shot. I get it. Their schedule gets a little bit more hectic going on the road. I think the New York Red Bulls are really good. But of those 3, I kind of like Vancouver more so than Real Salt Lake because they can win a game 1-0. I don't know if Real Salt Lake can do that in the moment.
I think it'll be
the real test lies ahead. Sorry, Kaylin, real quick, because bigger games are coming up for this Vancouver team. There are 2 parts to me about this. Is the one real test they've had this season was the LA Galaxy at home, and Galaxy ends up winning 3-1 on the road. That's a bit of a failure for this Vancouver Whitecaps team early on. The other part is we've seen them over the last couple of years play some of the bigger teams in North America in playoff competition. I'm talking about Tigres in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, LAFC in the playoffs, and those teams wipe the floor with them. Yeah. I think they're still one more player away from being towards the real upper echelon of the Western Conference.
I couldn't agree more with you, Sasha, just with that, because we talk about Ryan Gauld and Brian White and these players, and maybe don't give them enough credit that they deserve because they're not those huge, big money signings like the Denny Bwangas that we see in Major League Soccer. But they've proven last season and this season already that they do score goals. But I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like they need to go out and spend some big money on one of those kind of superstar signings that can give those confidence in big games.
Come October, are any of these 3 teams challenging the Galaxy for the top spot?
No.
Sasha?
Nope.
I think Salt Lake does. I don't think Galaxy's going to run away with the Western Conference. They've been very good, but the questions around the Galaxy is they still give up too many goals. too many goals at the back. They've given up so many chances this year in every single game. Yes, their attack is carrying the team right now, but if they don't figure things out in the back, I think Salt Lake can challenge this team.
I think this summer's massive. I think both LA teams do a lot. I think the Seattle Sounders will do something big because of the new rules coming in and the ability to spend money. I think if you're asking me right now, Colorado, RSL, Vancouver, challenging the number 1 spot in the West, the answer is 100% no.
The team that has the number 1 spot in the league is Inter Miami and Lionel Messi, who they pay a visit to 60,000 plus at Gillette Stadium, and the lowly New England Revolution come this weekend. Taylor Twellman, you've been making the rounds on local media talking about this game and what a match it's going to be as Miami is limping in 9 players now unavailable when you count Diego Gomez, the latest to have the injury bug, out at least 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Taylor, how does Tata Martino weather the injury storm?
The way he's done it up to this point, just hope that Messi, Suarez, and Busquets are kind of healthy and they'll carry the team. Truthfully, thankfully, Diego Gomez is just an ankle, because watching that live, that felt like it was going to be much more serious, because he's got a big summer coming up with the Olympics and whatnot, and obviously I'm a big fan of his. I think Tata Martino, throughout his entire time as a manager, doesn't manage minutes well. He doesn't substitute well. He did this with Almiron and Joseph in Atlanta. He's done it up to this point. I've asked him personally one-on-one, how do you do it? He looks at me like I got 2 heads. He flies by the seat of his pants when it comes to this. Now, in saying that, they're potentially bringing in a new signing in the Paraguayan international winger, Matias. So there's another player that could potentially be here. I don't think he'll be here this weekend. He's just going week by week, game by game, seeing who's available. Campana may be healthy, but the fact is, if Messi's on the field with Busquets and the pieces fill in the gaps, it's very, very capable of getting them results. They've done it up to this point. Now, this weekend, Sasha and Kaylin, it's a little different. It's turf. I was there when Busquets and Messi played in Charlotte. They were very uncomfortable playing on that surface. It's going to be interesting to see how they do it this weekend. And I'm going to get the jokes out of the way. The last time the Revolution had 60,000 in the building, the Revolution lost the MLS Cup 2002, and yours truly did not have a single shot on goal.
I was not going to bring any of that up for the record.
Shut up, Jillian. Yes, you were.
No, I wasn't.
I feel like you're flying by the seat of your pants, T, with that take with Tata Martino, just being able to manage minutes and juggle minutes. When you have some of the best players in the world, we saw with Atlanta United, he wasn't taking Miguel Almiron out of the team. He wasn't taking Joseph Martinez out of the team. You leave your best players on the pitch, specifically in Major League Soccer. Take away the international side with Mexico. But he's going to have to do this. You can't juggle minutes when you don't have the players to do so. You look at the injury list, 9 huge key player injuries for this. But then you look at last game, Lionel Messi back from injury, back-to-back games, multiple goal contributions. Luis Suarez, I was super critical of him in the beginning of the season. Is he mobile enough? He's made me eat my words. He has been unbelievable in Major League Soccer. Those 2 players individually can carry this team through those injuries as of right now. I will say, though, it is very different playing on turf.
One team that would be able to make a massive statement if they could pull it off this week would be the New England Revolution. They have 4 points of a possible 24 to start the year. Certainly not the start that new manager Caleb Porter wanted. Kaylin, where does this one fall in terms of must wins on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being must win?
T, I'm sorry. I know this is your team 100. They have to win this. 1 win on the season. They've only scored 5 goals, Jillian. It's been embarrassing, if I'm being completely honest. Tactically, it doesn't look like they have a vision on how they want to play. They look disengaged. They look unmotivated. They don't look like they're willing to work for one another, both on and off the pitch. Then you have Caleb Porter. He's tried every tactic on the field. He's tried every tactic off the pitch, meaning, he's gone to the media before the Charlotte game saying, we're going to win this game. Then he retracted that statement after the loss against Toronto, where, quite frankly, you shouldn't be dropping points to Toronto considering the key injuries they had. He said, we're missing players. We need to sign players. Look at the roster that they've had. They only have really lost 2 main key players from last year, Gustavo Bo and Petrovic in net. Other than that, anyone in the world would love to manage this team right now. This is an opportunity for Caleb Porter and his team in front of 60,000 fans, to inspire themselves and to get motivated and get moving. Because right now, if you're a New England Revolution player and fan, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, but this can single-handedly change your season around.
100%.
Right? And so
Yes.
Sporting Kansas City last year went winless in their first 10 games. They made the playoffs. They surprised everyone, beat the #1 seed St. Louis City. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but who knows? Right now, this time last year, we were all writing off Peter Vermees in Sporting Kansas City.
They also
I'm
had
a little
multiple
surprised
injuries, though, for Sporting Kansas City. There's not really an excuse for New England Revolution going into the season. All their players have been healthy.
Yeah, but you said they lost Petrovic, and he historically had top 3 of the best seasons of all time, Kaylin.
100%. But you look at Sporting Kansas City, they had 5 main players out, and 3 of those being DPs to start their season. The Revs don't have that excuse. A goalkeeper, and you have 1 win on the season.
But the Revs have a summer, Kaylin. They have a summer where they can buy out one of those DPs and then bring in 2 DPs. And all it takes is to survive to the summer, and then you could do what Sporting Kansas City did. Little different. They bring back 3 injured DPs. I go out and sign 2 new ones. It's the same thing, just a different way of doing it. All I'm saying is they win this weekend. They survive to the summer. They bring in 2 legitimate DPs with the $20 million plus that they sold Turner and Petrovic. It wouldn't surprise me 1 iota at the end of the year if we're talking about the Revolution that made a run into the 7th or 8th seed because they all of a sudden turned the corner. I don't think they do that, but I'm also saying it's not completely impossible with Inter Miami depleted on turf that they win this weekend, and we look at this camera next week and go, see, told you.
Yeah, it's not out of the question, Taylor, but also we haven't seen fight from these players. We haven't seen buy-in yet to what Caleb Porter is coaching.
Why is that, Sasha?
And I don't know. If I had the answers, I'm sure Caleb Porter would have the answers also. It's hard to put your finger on because they have some quality pieces. But the other thing to mention is Vrioni has to start scoring. He has to put the ball in the back of the net. Carlos Hill cannot do everything on his own. He's not a born goal scorer. He's the setup guy, but he's the guy who's the only one who's putting the ball in the back of the net right now for this team. They've got to figure something out, whether it's off the field or on the field, to come together and show a little bit of fight first.
I think it's off the field, Sasha. And by the way, Carlos Hill, he's got to put it away a little bit and stop throwing the toys out of the sandbox. What I've seen this year, I haven't seen in the previous 5. He's got to show up and deliver as well.
We'll see who's saying told ya after 7:30 p.m. Eastern time when the New England Revolution take on Inter Miami on MLS Season Pass. Now joining us in studio, we've got Kaylin Carr, Dynamo and Fire legend, and the armchair analyst himself, Matt Doyle. This is going to be fun. I've missed you guys. I haven't seen you in a week. Let's talk about New York City FC. The 5-game homestand continues. Kaylin Carr, you've been on the call for some of City's games this weekend. They've got Charlotte FC. You said a couple weeks back that they have to take advantage of this homestand, and they have 2 wins and a draw. What's been different, and why is it working? Yeah,
I think the target that I set was 7 points for them, and they've already got that. And I think you told me, Doyle, that's it, they should get more. And I said, based on the performances we'd seen at that point, we had to be realistic, but they've upped the ante a little bit. The defense has been very good, 2 clean sheets. Matt Freese has stepped up in big moments, but it's actually been the defense overall. The structure has looked much better at home. They've been compact. The way they've moved forward even has been more responsible, not leaving gaps. And then the big difference for me, honestly, has been Santi Rodriguez. He has stepped up as well this season. 4 goals, 1 assist. He's only scored 6 goals. That's the most he scored ever, even in Uruguay. So the fact that this far in the season, he's already got 4 goals has been tremendous. You see the ball across here. Julian Fernandez has stepped in, getting goals as well. So I think that attack is clicking a little bit more. Munsif Bekrar is the lone exception. He was devastated, missed a sitter in this last one. I think they have to move him to the bench. Sometimes as a striker, it's better just to take the pressure off, get a new perspective, come on, and see if things change. But even without that number 9 position hitting, New York City have gotten back on track at home.
If they only end up with 7 points out of this trip, they're going to end this trip below the playoff line in the Eastern Conference. It's simple math, Kaylin. They need at least 10 from this 5-game road trip, or 5-game homestand. They have the 7 in hand. They have a game against Charlotte this weekend that they have to win, and they finish it up with Colorado. They should be favorites in that one as well. I do agree with you that they've looked better in attack and they've looked more stable in defense. No surprise there because they've had Keaton Parks and James Sands available for the duration of this homestand so far. Those guys have proved to be irreplaceable. Keaton Parks is a one-man field tilt machine, just a progressive passes, getting the ball onto the foot of Santi Rodriguez in those high leverage positions. And then James Sands, he puts out fires everywhere. And he also plays with a bit of bite. Right? He plays with a bit of physicality that I'm not sure the rest of this very young team brings to the table yet. So I think as long as those guys are good, then this team is going to be good. But if they finish with 7 from these 5 games, nobody in that locker room is going to be happy, and nobody should be.
Charlotte, it's a little bit of a different story. The offense still not clicking for this Charlotte team. And to recap the season, they started off the year shipping out 2 designated players, not a ton of movement to replace them. The one big move was this guy, Lial Abada, 22-year-old Israeli winger. A ton of pressure on him. 1 goal, over 270 MLS minutes. How much more do you have to see from Abada?
I mean, I think he's actually been playing well. If you look at them last week in that loss to Minnesota, Abada's the only one who's creating danger on that team. So yeah, he's doing his job as far as I'm concerned. It is the rest of that team, and this is not surprising, right? Like, Charlotte came out playing against the ball to start the season. The only time they create danger is in transition. That is what new managers tend to do. You want to keep it simple. You want to keep the game in front of you. They have done that. What has to happen now is the midfield behind Lial Abada and one of the strikers have to do their job with the ball, because teams aren't going to let them play in transition week after week after week. We saw what happened in March when teams let them do that. They gave up goals. Like, okay, you're going to have 60% of the ball. You're going to have to break us down with that. Lial Abada can help with that, but as a winger, that is not his job. That's the midfield's job. That's the center forward's job to drop back and try to link play a little bit. And until they solve that, no winger in the world outside of the guy in Miami can fix that for a team.
Charlotte averaging just 1 goal a game. Let's move over to Minnesota United taking on Sporting Kansas City. Minnesota, they're fun. This is a fun team. Reynoso clearly not coming back anytime soon, but they find themselves 5th in the West. You heard us talk about it at the top of the show. RSL Vancouver and Colorado are the 2 through the 4. Is Minnesota a 1 through 4 seed?
I think so. Yeah, I think they can be, especially when you consider the way that this season has gone for them. And I think we were rightly critical to ask, what is the plan here? What's happening here? They don't have a manager. There was so much going through of when the manager was going to even appear. And then the profile of the manager as well. Youngest manager, 32 years of age, wants to change the system around a team that had Reynoso, which didn't really make sense to press. But they haven't had Reynoso. Now he's gone. I love the way that the team handled it. Thought Boxall stepped up and said, hey, we're focused on the guys that are here. And also, this guy doesn't seem to kind of said the quiet part out loud. Like, this guy doesn't really seem to care too much about what's happening here. And I think from that standpoint, the idea that this team now has the opportunity to create their new identity. Hlongwane hasn't been fully fit and healthy and available as of yet. Robin Ludd has been fantastic. He's been used all over the place, now pushing up into that more Reynoso 10 playmaking position where I think he can really thrive, although I think over time they're going to maybe look to fill that position. But from where they are right now and the potential that I see towards the back half, I think top 4 seems realistic.
Kaylin, you use the word identity. Doyle, how much credit does Eric Ramsey deserve in creating that new identity? Young, speaking English and Spanish, a bit of an open book. How much of it comes down to him?
He deserves a ton of credit. To be fair, they were good before he arrived. Also, to be fair, I picked them as a top 4 team before this season. Of course, I had the wrong rationale. I thought that just Reynoso enough, and then some good pieces around him, and then the freshening up maybe the voice at the top with Eric Ramsey. I thought that's how it would happen. So I didn't see it happening like this. And what's really impressed me about Eric Ramsey so far is his flexibility and his willingness to say, hey, I got it wrong. This was on me last week. I got it wrong. Let's fix it this week. We're gonna change. We went to a back 5. We're gonna have our left fullback pinch in possession to create more of a 4 at times, or sometimes coming in and playing as a central midfielder as well. He's basically checked all the boxes, including a big one, player development and letting young guys cook. And one of the biggest surprises in the league so far this year, Tani Olawosei, he was drafted a couple years ago. He played a lot in MLS Next Pro. Then last year he played on loan in USL Championship with San Antonio. Scored goals for fun at that level. And when a guy scores at that level, you say, all right, let's see if you can do it with the big boys. And he came, was a super sub off the bench the first month of the season. Now he's starting and he's scoring goals as a starter as well. And just that openness from Eric Ramsey to be like, all right, if you're good enough in practice and you're good enough at a lower level, you're going to get a chance. It reminds me a lot of what we saw with Brian White, first with the Red Bulls and then with Vancouver. And we know how important Brian White has been to that team, which is another one of those top 4 in the West type of teams so far this year.
Nice humble brag, Doyle. A couple of minutes back.
It wasn't that humble.
Fourth in the West. On the other side of the coin, it'll be a fascinating matchup in terms of managers. Eric Ramsey, new and young, and then Peter Vermes, the longest tenured manager in MLS. And this is the last 4 games for Sporting Kansas City, where they continue to drop points. 14 points dropped from winning positions this year. A reporter asked about blowing leads at home in 5 of their 6 home games this year. Peter Vermes basically saying, I'm not worried about it. He said, I think you guys are all focused on that. I think you missed the game. You guys are worried about it. I am not. There were some other words in between there, but you get the gist. Are you worried about it, Doyle?
I mean, I think we all watched the game, and yeah, we're all starting to be worried about it.
But it's entertaining. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, so last year at the start of the season, Sporting Kansas City were historically bad by their standards, and we could all write it off because they were missing basically half their starting lineup. All 3 DPs were injured. They didn't have the back line settled. They didn't have the midfield settled. Those guys are all healthy. For the most part, those guys are all healthy, and we're seeing that when they get on the ball, they can create chances, they can score goals. They have not shown the ability to kill games off, and for a team with this much veteran know-how and supposedly this much skill on the ball, like, yeah, the excuses are gone. It's a worry. We're 2 months into the season. It's more than a quarter done. If you're not worried, you're not watching the game as far as I'm concerned.
I just want to throw something out there that you said to us during the midseason last year, that when you played, it was Children's Mercy Park that you hated to go, which flies under the radar. You always talk about Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Providence Park. So this is particularly shocking from Kansas City.
Okay, so I'm not worried. I'm with Peter Vermes on
Peter.
this. And I have been watching the games.
Peter.
I've done a couple of Peter Vermes games this season, and I've seen this team play. And, you know, the difference is I think last year is a perfect example of why you shouldn't be worried. They didn't win a game in their first 10 matches. They only scored 3 goals. They had 7 losses. And they went to the conference semifinal, beating the number 1
All they had
seed.
to do was change half their team, and they'd be fine. So
They got healthy. They got going again.
The window just closed. They did not make any big moves this window. They're not going to be able to change half their team now with 10
No,
games.
they do need to figure out how to close games, and that's where, for me, the worry falls a little bit more on Vermes, on his shoulders, because his substitutions have not been there. They've been missing in these matches against the Galaxy, once again against Miami, and then again this past week against St. Louis, only 1 substitution. So that's not freshening up the team. The one match that I did watch in person was against Toronto, and he makes
Peter
in
slide
Vargas.
you, by the way? What did he send over you?
Well, I actually think it's a negative, because when you're in a team and you go through the first 10 and it's so terrible and you still end up getting away with it, then the beginning of next season starts, it's hard to have that same desperation of feeling like, oh, we had to close out a match, you need desperation. And they're playing against teams that press, specifically St. Louis. You think of a Miami in front of that crowd. You think of the way that these teams play, even the Galaxy, St. Louis, all these teams. And so that end of game, I think, is that bad habits that came, which is why I'm not a big fan of this idea of a wild card that bails teams out, that blow it in the first 10 matches of the season. So they got a free pass to get back in the playoffs when they shouldn't have been. They made it count. But this year, I think you're seeing some of the remnants of these back habits popping back up for Sporting Kansas City.
Before we move on, isn't that an identity, though, of Peter Vermes not making a ton of subs, Doyle?
I mean, that's been his MO for a long, long time.
Would he change that now?
I mean, it doesn't seem like it. It doesn't. I mean, if there was a time to do it, then the past couple of weeks, especially at the start of the season, when nobody is really 90 minutes fit, that would be the time to do it. They've only played 3 games on the road so far. They have played 6 at home. This was the easiest part of their schedule, and they are below the playoff line. I'd be worried.
A rematch from just 2 weeks ago with LAFC hosting the Portland Timbers. 2-2 was the scoreline last time. Portland Timbers played a man down thanks to a red card, Maxime Crepeau, in the 48th minute. Caitlin, the 2 sides now meet in Los Angeles, where the series shifts. How different are you expecting this one to look?
Well, I think both teams have changed a little bit, and you think of the way LAFC are going to have to maybe shift things, specifically with the injury. Aaron Long went down in this last match. Kai Kamara started. He was don't even think on the team at that point they played earlier this season. So it's a bit of a different profile, although it's the same sort of outcome as far as playing with Denny Bouanga and relying on him. And on the other side, it's really been, I'd say, difficult for Portland to be able to get results. I think they're winless in their last 6, some draws mostly. Evander has been tremendous, but so both teams seem so reliant on their star players with Evander and Bouanga to get results.
My question with this was the Mateus Bogusz game. My question with this one is, are we going to see Bogusz back up top as sort of a false 9 and Kai Kamara back to the bench? Edward Atuesta back in central midfield. That is what Steve Cherundolo has tended towards over the past couple of years, is not necessarily playing with a real number 9. Kai Kamara is a real number 9. He has been for the whole entirety of his professional career, as far as I'm concerned. I think he gives LAFC a little bit more flexibility. I think what we've seen from LAFC is they're uncomfortable attacking in any phase except transition. If you have Kamara there as a center forward who can A, win balls in the air, B, link play, and C, occupy center backs, well, that gives you a little bit of a nuance, a little bit of flexibility in how you want to play. That is a big question for me, and I think once we see the lineup an hour before game time, we'll get an idea of whether or not Steve Cherundolo wants the game to look different than what they put on the field a couple weeks ago.
Let's discuss the reigning champs, the Columbus Crew. We are having this discussion before they partake in CONCACAF Champions Cup semifinal against Liga MX Giants Monterrey. So let's talk a little bit big picture. Kaylin, you called me out last week when I said they hadn't won a game in 6 across all competitions. Now we're at 7, drawing this past weekend. Your worry level change at all?
No, because
the
part I was taking issue was the fact that it just seemed to ignore the CONCACAF Champions Cup, because 2 of those winless results, they advanced against Tigres to play against Monterrey.
But they drew again this weekend at home.
They did, and in that game, at the very death of the match, Cucho Hernandez smacks it off the post. That would have been a goal. There was a missed penalty that was clear and obvious for me watching that Cucho was brought down in the box and didn't get the call there. So I think this team, we've seen teams like the Seattle Sounders absolutely crumble under the pressure of having to play deep into CONCACAF Champions Cup. The fact that this team is still top 4 place in the East, going through all of this and playing against to give themselves a chance to go all the way with Champions Cup has been impressive. So I really can't stress enough how chill I am about this.
You're not worried about dropping leads at home. You're not worried about lots of draws.
Hey, it's early. It's early.
Yeah. I like those vibes. It is a full circle moment for Laurent Courtois, the head coach of Montreal, Columbus's opposition this weekend. He had tremendous success with Columbus's next pro team, and now he is the first team manager. How would you grade his performance so far for Montreal? 11 points through 8 games.
A. Yeah, like maybe not an A+, but a solid A from him. They did what they needed to do on the road. They have now taken 4 points from 2 at home. He has done a good job of getting young players into the game. He has a very clear and defined sort of identity for the team that's actually evolving now that they're at home. They're using the ball more and looking more like that next pro team. He has done it while really important pieces, including those 2 guys who combined on the goal right there, have been injured. Yankov is just getting back into the team, and Joseph Martinez, unfortunately, is injured and out for a while. Matias Kokoro, the DP number 9, he was excellent for them the first month and a half of the season. He's injured now. So it hasn't mattered. It hasn't mattered. Montreal has continued to believe in who they are, continued to cycle guys into the lineup, and continued to mostly get results. And I think anybody who expected more from this group at this point was kind of lying to themselves, and they're in a great position now. I mean, they still have a home-heavy schedule for the rest of the season, because they started with that 6-game road. They're in a great position.
Yeah, I love A. A is the grade for me as well. When you think of going on the match to start the season, 6 matches in a row. I've done that twice in my time in MLS. It is difficult. We did not come back with as many points as Montreal did, and they even went on a little skid at the end. And I'm fascinated to see how Courtois comes comes out in this match against Columbus, because we've seen that evolution playing with the ball.
He's going to want to have the ball. I guarantee
If he
you,
goes head-to-head?
Montreal is going to come into this game and say, no, we're going to do what you do, even better.
I would love
Guarantee
that. I
it.
would love that, and I wouldn't be surprised by it. The only thing, as you mentioned, without Kokoro, Joseph Martinez, it's Lassiter
and Mason Toye.
And Toye. But they're a little bit better in transition,
Yeah.
I think. So they could set deep and go. Maybe a little bit more of a mixture, but no doubt about it, it's been an A for Montreal and Courtois.
Well, we'll see if they get another road win this season, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on MLS Season Pass. Time now for buying or selling. This is how it goes. Matt Doyle gives us the number. And Kaylin Carr, this week, you've got all the cash. You tell us, are you buying that or are you selling that?
Wow, Mo, dude, just said I had enough. He just dropped out. Mo, where you at, bro?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means he's got all the money or if he went broke.
No, he doesn't want to share. That's what it means.
Okay, well, the spotlight is on you, my friend. Doyle, take it away. Austin taking on LA.
Yeah, our number is 17.7%. That's a percentage of Austin's final third passes that are crosses, which is 8th in the league so far this year. So still pretty high, but last year that number was 22% on the dot, which was the highest percentage in MLS. And to be clear, this is a bad thing. Once you get to the final third, you want to have more ideas than just lumping the ball in towards the center forward. So to that end, I think having Diego Rubio, who's more of a false nine than a traditional number 9, I think having him as the front runner has allowed Austin FC to be a little bit more nuanced in attack, and it's benefiting them overall.
I'm buying that. I like that. And why does it have to be so negative? That, by the way, this is a bad thing. There's some progress. That's what the stat shows. There's some progress as far as last year. Yes, it was exhausting watching them run out of ideas and just whipping balls in the box with crowded numbers and no success coming on that showed where they were in the table. And I think this year it's been a little bit better as far as those ideas. And I like Rubio coming as that false 9, dropping a little bit deep, mainly because it makes it more efficient as far as those balls in the box and creates more space for runners to come in. And that's where we've seen the best of Driussi, where you're never quite sure where he's going to pop up, and there's lanes for him to progress from those deeper positions instead of everything being clogged in the box. So I'm buying this.
A big part of this as well, Austin's attacking in transition more. Fewer of their attacks are coming out of pure possession, and once they got into pure possession situations last year, that's when it was bad, Kaylin, because they had no ideas beyond crossing the ball. So getting out in transition, using that space that, as you said, Rubio creates for the other guys, that's been huge for Austin the past 4 games.
If I was a player, Kaylin, I would want to play for you. I love the positivity, the spin.
Appreciate that.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
One team that needs no spin is the LA Galaxy.
Yeah, our number is 43.8%. That's the percentage of their shots that the Galaxy are putting on target, which tells us the obvious thing. They are clinical and ruthless in attack. And because of that, their attackers are getting good looks. They're putting those looks on frame. It's the case of the eye test matching the numbers. The Galaxy are really good going forward and are causing problems for the opposing back line.
Yeah, I'm buying that. Easy buy, especially when I think of Dejan Joveljic and how he's going to benefit from that. You think of the positions that they get into, the way Paintstill is able to stretch that back line, get in behind, and then the quality of chances that are dropping in the box. That's why I think Joveljic has a real chance to compete for the Golden Boot. I'm still sticking with my early pick with Chicho, but Joveljic, with the quality of chances, comes exactly from what this stat.
Orlando taking on Toronto. Orlando.
Our number is 9.77. That's the average vertical distance of Robin Jansen's passes, as per our friends at American Soccer Analysis. It's the lowest mark for him since coming to MLS, down almost 20% just in terms of the progressive distance since a couple years ago. Janssen, he still passes the eye test, but I think the injuries in central defense and the turnover on the back line around him, it's caused him to play a little bit safer this year. And that is a big part of why Orlando are less dynamic, or have been less dynamic going forward than in years past. If their best distributor has to play it safe, it doesn't mean, it means bad things for the midfield and the attack.
I'll buy that. Yeah, I'll buy that. I think
you're buying everything, brother.
Well,
You'll be broke by the end of this one.
You got some good stats today.
We'll be out here alone by next week.
I think when you don't have you can't take a risk if you don't know what's in front of you, and I think that's why he's playing more safe out of the back. You can't trust necessarily. Facu Torres is playing that 10 position. They haven't figured out exactly the right mix there. And then the other one that I think might also be a part of this is Duncan McGuire has been on the bench, and when I think of verticality and the ability to play line-breaking passes, his ability to get out into space and to make those runs in the channels, I don't think they have the same thing with Muriel to be able to have that verticality. So I think that's the other part of this that might be playing into
I think it has looked better and more dynamic the past couple of weeks as Wilder Cartagena and Cesar Araujo have gotten back into the starting lineup in central midfield. Those guys, super underrated, a big part of why this was a 63-point team last year.
What about John Herdman's Toronto?
32.4%. That's the percentage of shots Toronto face that they block, which is the 4th highest mark in the league. So they get numbers behind the ball, and it points to something that you've actually talked about, Kalen, which is that they're at their best right now when they're compact, defending deep, and getting as many bodies as possible between the ball and the goal. Toronto FC have tried to be more expansive. It has not worked. And I think what we'll see as the season goes on is that they become almost like a Nashville SC team over the past couple of years when they draw a deep line, they absorb pressure, and then they hit on the counter.
Next up, oh, go ahead. Sorry, I was going there.
You gotta let the man buy.
I got so used to him just buying that I.
Wow, now I feel the pressure.
Now you have to
I gotta flip it on him. No, but you're right. This is the right decision. And look, this Toronto FC team played compact the way they started this season, and they found a moment of magic through Insigne, and then Insigne goes down, and that's exactly when things changed. They'd only given up 2 goals in their first 5 matches, and then in their last 3 after that, they gave up 10. So that's because they couldn't trust the fact that they were going to get goals. This match I was doing up in Toronto, and we saw them go back to the exact same system we saw before. Played defensively. Caleb Porter in New England had all the possession, but really not much threat other than one big chance from Frioni. Sean Johnson makes a huge save. So the fact that they then find that moment of magic from a different person, Prince Owusu, with that lovely little, I don't even know what you'd call that. I was on the match myself. It was a behind the leg back heel goal. Was tremendous. So they have to trust that they can find those players to come up with with the goods like that. I thought this last week was a big step forward for them getting back to business as far as being defensively sound.
You know what I've been doing, Joe? I've been watching past episodes of the show, finding Kalen's take, and then finding a stat to match Kalen's
The real
take.
truth of this is I've actually been feeding Doyle's column. Nobody wants to talk about it, but I've been passing. I've been ghostwriting.
Chief armchair analyst correspondent, Kalen Carr.
I have a hard time believing that.
Gotta check the receipts.
You're a man of mystery, Kalen Carr. Chicago Fire looking to get things going, taking on Atlanta. Let's start with the home side.
Yeah, 4 unforced errors leading directly to a goal by the Fire this year. That's the worst mark in the league. And even the best teams in MLS can't afford to shoot themselves in the foot like that on a weekly basis. And Chicago definitely aren't among the best teams in MLS. The margins are too thin for them to survive these kinds of mistakes. It's almost not even worth talking about what they're doing tactically until they excise these types of errors from their weekly performance.
This is too easy to buy, so I'm actually going to sell. I have to sell this one. It is
Fire
too
should
easy.
be too many more errors. Make more errors on the back line.
It's too obvious, and I would like to take this opportunity instead to plea to the Chicago Fire squad right now. This coming weekend, Zach Thornton, my ex-teammate, their goalkeeper coach, is going into the Ring of Fire. It is, the Hall of Fame for the Fire, and I look at the way this back line gives up goals and puts their goalkeeper under it, and I shiver at the idea that Zach Thornton would be in that goal and that I would make a decision like that. Even in training, I could not live with that. I'd be terrified. So just this weekend, please, I beg you, Chicago Fire, do not put on the night where Zach Thornton goes into the Ring of Fire, come up with a performance. Don't be your worst enemy. At least start there.
That was very thoughtful of you.
Thank you.
Atlanta United.
Our number is 58. That's where Thiago Almada ranks in expected assists so far this season, generating just 1.2 expected assists so far. That's nowhere near good enough from a guy who was MVP caliber, runner-up last year to Lucho Acosta. He's the centerpiece. He's the number 10. And I think you could point to issues elsewhere in the attack. The wingers have both been injured a little bit. Georgios Giacomakis has been injured a little bit. Almada is still the guy who stirs the drink, and coming into this season, I think we all thought he would be a best 11 caliber player. He's been pretty okay. They need better than pretty okay from the World Cup winner.
I have to buy this one as well. Just with Almada, his performance, 11 goals, 19 assists last year. Now, nothing like that as far as the offensive production. I think overall, this Atlanta team is only at about 70, 80% when it comes to clicking in the attack. And then defensively is where the goals are now going the other direction. And you mentioned the expected assists. I think Almada deserved an assist for that short corner they took that went down the other direction that Lucho Acosta ended up playing it behind Orellano. So they have to figure out that balance between the two sides because it has not been good enough so far. But I do think Atlanta United eventually figure it out, get back on track. They got to get their guys healthy at least.
Finally, a game you know very well. Dallas taking on Houston, the original Texas derby. Let's start with Nico Estevez's Dallas.
Yeah, our number is 84.9. That's the percentage accuracy on medium range passes for FC Dallas. So 15 to 30 yards is what we're talking
Not
about
horizontal
here.
or vertical, just medium.
Medium range
Got it,
passes
got it,
of 15 to 30 yards that move the opposition around at least a little bit, which is just 24th in MLS. The only teams beneath them in terms of accuracy tend to be the pressing teams that don't really care about passing accuracy. Dallas do. Under Nico Estevez, this has been a possession-based team for the past couple of years. Right now, they just don't move the ball quickly or accurately enough to create the types of advantages in possession that they have used pretty well since 2022. It is a major problem, and it makes it easy to make the field small against them, and that's why everything in attack has been so ponderous.
I'm selling that this week. And it's just for this week.
Okay.
Overall, I see the point. But this week, if they try to go out against Houston where their strength is in the middle and try to get those that midfield and play right into the heart of that team, they're going to run into big problems. They don't have Iramendi, right? Or is he back now?
He's back, but
Okay.
they haven't figured out how to use him.
But the guts of that team was supposed to be him and Pamukal, who is out, and then Jesus Ferreira as well, who's been missing. So they can't really continue to play the same way. And they have to throw it out the window as far as the long-term vision of this project and the way they want to play the philosophy. They need to get results right now because Nico Estevez is under pressure. They have to continue to find a way. And Houston gave up a direct goal against Austin. That's exactly what we saw off a goal kick. So whatever way you can survive, they have to figure it out because now with Hector Herrera back in Houston, you can't play into the middle.
We discussed this with New England and Miami. This could be such a pivotal moment for a team like Dallas that so desperately needs a win. Finally, Houston.
Yeah, our number is 64.4%, which is Houston's accuracy on long balls. I think that'll be a little bit counterintuitive to folks, but what needs to be understood is that the Dynamo, not Kalen Carr's Dynamo, this version of the Dynamo are so good at playing those short and medium range passes through central midfield. They're top 2 in accuracy and top 2 in volume at in each of those stats. They're not top in terms of volume, in terms of long-range passes. They don't hit a lot of them. But what they do is organize the pieces on the chessboard to then open up a path to hit a long diagonal to Griff Dorsey on the overlap, or on the other side to Aliou as a left winger. So they use the short passes to open up the avenue to attack with those long balls. It's been beautiful to watch, Kalen.
I wish I could go back in time, Jill, and sell on Doyle talking about long balls from Houston Dynamo, because I remember some bad takes from Doyle on my Dynamo sides that actually played better football than we got credit for at the time. But
Did that affect you?
I'm not holding on to it.
No, not at all.
Clearly.
No.
But I think in this case, I have to buy this one as well. And the key difference for me is when you think of long balls, people think direct. But think about the trajectory of them. They're not going straight down the field. The way that the angle is going in the orientation of them is diagonal. And that's the way Houston have been able to play. They shift you to one side of the field, they bring you in with these small passes, and then they find you over the top to Aliou in those spaces over behind. But it's kind of like the way we see Wilfred Nancy and the Columbus team drawing the opposition to one side to play to the next. Houston, not the same system. They have different patterns. Sometimes it is a little bit more in the air than maybe on the ground that we see in Columbus, finding that space in behind. But it's the same trajectory, the same idea. And I think the idea with Hector now coming back in, there's going to be more sort of gravity towards the middle of the field. You can drag people more, which should open up even more space for guys like Aliou to get in behind in the back line.
Here's a simple number. What's the final score in this one?
I'm going Houston. The way Dallas is playing right now.
Houston what, though?
This could be, with Hector back, I think this could be, I don't think Dallas is going to get a goal. I think it's going to be 2-0.
I was going to say 3-0.
3-0. So borderline blowout here from the Dynamo. Well, with Hector being back, they're the heavy favorites in this one. I'm going to apologize to Kaylin. You know what? Your team did actually play some good ball back in the day.
You made it to 2 finals.
I can't believe this is happening right now, guys. This is amazing.
Redemption.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Well, Doyle got out of the segment without giving us a score prediction. Thank you both. On Tuesday, the first transfer window in Major League Soccer came to a close. We saw some big names come into the league. We got the likes of Luis Suarez, Hugo Lloris, Joseph Painsil. But the word on the street has been just wait till summer. Taylor's been beating that drum all year. That is the time in soccer across the world where the moving and shaking really happens. So we'll talk summer in a little bit. But before we do, and you look at that first transfer window, which team should have done more in this first transfer window?
I'm doing this in a positive way, okay? I'm just throwing that out there. Sasha, I'm taking a page from your book, sitting on that little white picket fence. Houston Dynamo. And the only reason why I'm saying this is because you look at what Ben Olsen did last year. U.S. Open Cup win under his belt, finishing 4th in the West, ultimately losing to LAFC in that Western Conference semifinal. They're already sitting in 6th place right now. They've got 4 wins, 1 draw, and 3 loss on the season, and that's without 2 of their main DPs. Hector Herrera, he's been out since last December, finally has featured with his team coming off the bench and starting his first game. Ferreira, who was sent out on loan last year, and they've had to use him as that number 9 DP striker. If they go out and buy an ultimate number 9 goal-scoring threat, spend big money with the midfield that they have, this Houston Dynamo team, for me, is unstoppable because you look at Artur, you look at Bassi, you look at Coco Carrasquilla in that midfield. It's so difficult to defend them because of their movement. They'll play 3, they'll drop into a box. Coco Carrasquilla is so hard to pick up because he almost sometimes drops in and plays as that second number 10. Houston, for me, go and spend the money and win a title because I genuinely think that they can do it.
I like this take.
I love the take. And Sasha, you and I have texted on the side on this. I'd argue they didn't do enough in the winter either. Like when you see the regular season and the way it ended last year and the way they went to the Western Conference final, and you don't do anything in the winter, and then it comes to this and you don't do anything, they better do something in the summer. And I'd argue, Kaylin, it's not just the 9, it's depth. It's depth in the attack. It's the ability to actually do something and scare teams. And you also got to have a plan B if Hector Herrera is out injured. Kaylin, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the Houston Dynamo in the last 2 transfer windows have not done enough. Yes, they've re-signed Ben Olsen to a contract extension, but you got to give them something to work with. They haven't given him enough. I think Houston's a better team than where they're playing, in large part because they're not giving him enough to work with.
That's high praise on this show, too.
I
want to say agree, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Right, my job's done. I'll see you guys later. I'll see you on Saturday, yeah?
It only took you 4 segments, Kaylin.
It's only taken me 2 seasons.
All right. I don't know about you guys, but it's Sporting Kansas City for me. It's another team who didn't do enough in the transfer windows. This is a team that has open DP spot. DP number 10. It's calling out Peter Vermees, go and get one. But also maybe some young wingers to come and challenge Shallowy and Johnny Russell. I think Alan Pulido is best when he's used at that 9. Lately, he's been used at that 9.5, 10, kind of changing up the formation a little bit for him. He goes in at the 9. In my opinion, you get a DP number 10. It changes the complexity of this team. Maybe a U22 winger, like I said, to challenge those guys. This team needs a little bit of a refresh. They're the oldest team in the league, and some young blood could help.
It's amazing, Sasha, when you say that, too, because naturally all of us think it's Inter Miami that's the oldest team in the league. On average age, it is Sporting Kansas City. My only defense to that, Sasha, and you know this better than anyone, they may already have the 10. He just may have to wait till the summer, and they can't get him now, like Olivier Giroud with LAFC. But something this show has not talked a lot about, and we need to, from my understanding and research, 5 of their starters are out of contract. 5. Wow. That is Peter Vermees, staple team, the Johnny Russells, all of those guys that have been there. They lost Espinoza and Zuzi from a year ago with their history at the club. Johnny Russell's on there's going to be a lot of turnover, and we may get a glimpse of that this summer if they go out and get younger. I couldn't agree more, Sasha. Yeah. They got to get younger and more dynamic, not necessarily just bringing in players and then trying to play Pulido in a bad spot. They killed St. Louis City for 20 minutes when Pulido was the 9. I don't think you want to move him from that.
No, and they would be smart to bring in players this summer that start challenging and getting accustomed to Major League Soccer already for next season. We've seen how hard it is for players to adjust to the league, but when they get that first 6 months under their belt, next year they're cooking with gas if they do that.
I think challenging for, getting that MLS experience, but also challenging players as well that have been around for so long, that are comfortable. There's no one pushing me for a starting 11 position. You guys both know, you guys have played in teams where the younger guys come through and you're like, oh, Jesus, in the offseason, I got to get my backside together in order to keep fit, keep healthy, start putting the ball into the back of the net, because I don't have an excuse anymore, because I have an 18, 19, 20-year-old that can run circles around me.
Taylor, who's yours? Who should have done more?
Well, based on our first segments today, which was a great segment, I'd actually say the Revolution. Because when you see and look at what they've done and the fact that they haven't scored a ton of goals, nobody, and I've done a couple of their games, when you talk to the opposition, they're not really scared of anyone. And you go out and sign a center back and a goalkeeper? And I think they're going to do something, as we talked about in the first segment, a little bit more in the summertime, and they're going to wait for the new rules to kick in more dollars. But if you're going to do something intra-league and in-house, backup goalie and a center back? How does that instill confidence within the group? And that's where the roster's complicated. That's where I think it's difficult, and nobody's really talking about the previous regime and the contracts that are given. Now they can't move on from those players. So you bring in a center back, which all of us on the show have talked about. Now they've got 5 center backs, if you include Andrew Farrell in that conversation.
Even still the worst team in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, right? And I bet you if they were public about it, they tried to move 2 or 3 defensive players for an attacking player. Nobody bid on the contracts. But see where I'm going with. Based on what we talked about in the first segment to now, Sasha, you tell me right now that works for the Revolution, their fan base, and that team.
You're spot on with the Revs, by the way, but there are a lot of teams in this league that we could talk about and say the same thing.
True.
Teams that weren't championship teams last season and then didn't do enough. I was lucky when I played at Anderlecht. Our sporting director every season, no matter what, whether we won the title or not, 4 new players in to challenge everybody and keep everybody on their toes. Now, I know in Major League Soccer, a little bit different, salary cap, not so easy to bring in and get rid of players. But if you're not bringing in some young guys with quality into your team right now, it's a problem. This summer, I do expect a lot of changes, though. With the rules changing, if you're not going out and signing a few young players to add depth and quality to your team, you're doing it wrong.
But, Caitlin, think about this, right? Just do a move, a big one, to send a message. That's what I'm talking about with the Revs. It's been that flat.
But what message are you saying then? Who are you moving to send a big message? Or buying to send a big?
I'm moving someone big in my starting 11 that's real big enough where then it says, hang on a minute, nobody's safe.
Carlos Hill?
Nobody
are you
is
moving
safe right now. Well, that's more difficult because of the DP, but I'm not moving that at all. But am I moving one of my starting center backs? Absolutely.
Yeah.
1,000%. And if I'm not, I'm moving one of my starting midfielders because they haven't found the right balance to play behind Carlos Hill. You've got to send a message.
I also think
you've got to send a message to this team that it's not good enough. Remember, this is the same team before Leagues Cup and the dismissal of Bruce Arena, second in the East.
But this is what I'm saying. They haven't lost that many players from being second in the East. Yes, a goalkeeper, and we all know goalkeepers are important here. The only team that's really spent money on a goalkeeper that's in the league right now is St. Louis. So yes, it's a big part that has been moved. I get that, the communication, the confidence in which he has.
Since when you take Bruce Arena.
But when I look at the Revs, I look tactically. What do they want to play? Tactically, who do they want to be? Players don't really look like they're on the same page. So when I look at last year at the New England Revolution before Bruce Arena left, there hasn't been that big of a shift within the team. So for me, what is it tactically? Is it managerial side?
No, it's Caitlin, that's what I was trying to say in the first segment. The metrics will tell you Petrovic had a top 3 6-month season in the history of the league. Think about that. I think he covered up a lot of this. So we're all sitting there. I'm not saying this is a great team, but since that point, Sasha, you and I have talked about this 1,000 times. All of a sudden, it looks like that locker room saw a ghost. Now all of a sudden it looks like the locker room can't even play.
In the offseason, with all the managerials, what was there, 9 spots available? Which team, if you were a manager, would you have said, I will take that roster as it is right now because it's the best all-around team? You would have said the New England Revolution, and they are bottom in the East.
100%. Everyone would have said, and everyone did say the Revolution when they signed a 9. So they're willing to wait until they get the 9. That's what they said. But you guys are 100%. I'm not saying you're wrong. But then this happens, and you bring in another center back and a backup goalie. That's where I'm lost. That's where I'm like, hang on a minute. That group of players, they've got to be held accountable at some point. And the only way you hold them accountable, ship them out. Gone. See ya.
Let's end the show on a positive note. Taylor, you're always teasing the summer transfer window, which opens on July 18th. You know a lot. Give me one word to describe what we can expect this summer.
Unorthodox.
Ooh.
Okay.
I like that.
It's unlike anything this league's ever seen.
And we had Messi last summer.
Some owners are chopping it. Yeah, but we've seen Messi. We saw David Beckham.
Right?
Okay?
No, I'm excited. I like unorthodox. I'm all for it.
This is I think a lot of technical directors are rolling up their sleeves. They're ready to dig in.
I love it.
Because this league now is taking the next step of progression to compete with Mexico. The only question this league has to ever ask is Mexico sweating the kind of moves this league wants to make? I think this summer is going to be a little unorthodox.
You know which team showed that? Colorado. My team.
How are we back at Colorado? That does it for This Is MLS for Taylor Twellman, Sasha Kleshton, and my girl, Kaylin Kyle. We will see you all next week. Thanks so much.
No pants on, Sasha.
Me neither.